Hi, my name is Ben, and I'm just going to make a short video about the basics of navigating between 2 points out in the hills, mountains, or just remote areas. And it's really aimed at just those folks who are starting out. I'm not suggesting for a moment that after watching this you head off onto your own into the wilderness, having never used a map or a compass before. Absolutely not. But as a sort of a first step. And especially for those people who feel, I'm no good at map reading, or I can't navigate, or I always need somebody else to do it. I'm really aiming this at you because it's really kind of stripping things back to the bare basics. And from there you can do your own further education and practice, which is really important. Practice makes perfect, if you wish. And going to strip away all the sort of modern technology, GPS, smartphones, etc., that can and are used as aids these days, and just go back to two pieces of equipment: map and compass. Very simple. So I live in Dublin, Ireland, and the map that I use, part of an excellent series which is east-west mapping, and this particular one is the Dublin and Wicklow Mountains. It's a 1:30,000 scale, which might seem unusual, but actually it's a very good scale in terms of size. So that the features that you would want to recognise when you're out walking or hiking. And you can see the back there, it's got that sort of highlighted red rectangle, which is the area that the map covers. The other piece of equipment is a compass. The one I use is a Silva. From my own experience and from talking to other folks, it's an excellent make. There's lots out there. This particular model is a 154, which has a few extra bells and whistles on it. Costs about, not too sure exactly, maybe somewhere in the region of 30-40 euros, but a really good, worthwhile investment if you are looking to kind of get out into the hills on any regular basis. And that's basically it in terms of equipment: map, compass. So what we're going to do next is just a few other little demos on taking a bearing off a map, reading a distance off a map, a little bit on feature recognition, before we then head out into the actual site proper, and we'll actually see if the proof of the pudding is in the eating of it, and actually see if we can get successfully from our start point to our finish point. Okay, so the area on the map that we're going to go and do this navigation exercise is up on Sagart Hill. You can see it named here. It's also called Slieve Tool. And the 2 points that we're going to navigate between are, they're actually two ancient burial mounds or tombs, supposedly about 5,500 years old. So our start point is, you might just make out this little red symbol here, and the point that we're going to navigate to is this little red dot here between the S and the L of Slieve, and beside it you'll see the word Cairn. So what we're going to do then is we're going to take our compass, and using this black line that's within the compass body itself, that's, if you like, our guideline or our navigation line, and we're literally just going to line up the 2 points nice and accurately, and like so. And then what we're going to do is, that's the first bit. After that, then we're going to turn our actual compass needle itself, or the body of it, around, and these black red lines, so that they are parallel with, or in line with, the black corresponding grid lines on the map. What's important here is that the red arrow here is pointing north, and that is in line with what's north on the map. A mistake that's common enough is that it gets swiveled around 180 degrees, so you get your bearing 180 degrees wrong. So your red north arrow is facing towards north on the map, and your red black lines are parallel or in line with the black grid lines on the map. So that's pretty much it as far as the map is concerned. And then all we need to do, when we're happy we have that accurate, we need to just take a note of our reading. So we'll see here that the bearing that we have just taken looks to be in around 103 degrees. So all we need to do now is just take a note of that, and we'll be ready to use that information to go and do our navigation. That's it. So before we proceed any further, there's just one other adjustment we need to make to our bearing, and that is the difference between grid north and magnetic north. Why is that? Well, we took a grid bearing using the grid lines on our map, but remember we are using a compass which has a needle which points towards magnetic north, and there is a difference between the two, which varies depending on when you are in time and where you are in the world. So what you need to do is go to the legend of any decent map, and it'll tell you what to do. And in this case, it's saying that grid north is at the top of this map. If using a magnetic compass, note that magnetic north is 6 degrees west of grid north in 2010. So annual decrease is about 1 degree every 6 years. So that means we're 10 years away, so it's 1 and a bit. It's enough just to round it to 1. So instead of it being 6 degrees, it's 5 degrees. And then you measure a grid bearing between 2 points, your current location and where you want to go, and we've done that already. And then you add on the magnetic variation, which is 6 degrees in 2010 and is 5 degrees in 2020. So you remember our grid bearing that we took earlier was 103. We add 5 and it's 108, which is our magnetic bearing that we're going to use. So just a quick note on just setting your actual compass and then orientating yourself. So you'll see there the notch there at 108 degrees, which is the magnetic bearing that we've took. And then if you see, as I rotate, you'll see that needle moving. So white at one end, red at the other, red being the north end with a little N at the top. So what we need to do then, so as I'm looking down here, you're seeing the view that I'm looking at my compass as I look down, as I hold it into my chest. So I simply rotate my body around until the moving red arrow lines up with the fixed red arrow in the casing of the compass. And that is facing north. And then as I look out then, you remember those black lines that I used to line up on the map? And this arrow here pointing that. So that is a direction of travel. So that if I walk in that direction, that's me walking at a bearing of 108 degrees with respect to magnetic north, which is what we'll be doing. So far we've taken a bearing. So we're also going to need to know the distance. So you'll see here I've placed down the compass with the small divisions here, which are millimeters. So you can see 0 millimeters and 10 millimeters. And if you look closely, and you'll see the 2 points, the start point and the finish point, which is the dot there between the S and the L. And it looks to be about 7 millimeters. So how do we convert that? Well, our map scale is 1:30,000, which basically means that 1 millimeter will represent 30,000 millimeters, which is 30 meters. So really our conversion is quite simple, because we just multiply by 3 and add a 0 to go from millimeters on our page to meters in actual reality. So in this case, 7 millimeters multiplied by 3 is 21, add a 0, 210, that's 210 meters, and that's the distance that we need to cover. So we'll head off now shortly up onto the actual location, which is within 5 kilometers where I happen to live, so it's fine. And we have our bearings and our distance of 210 meters. So we have our bearing, adjusted it for magnetic, we have our distance. But what are we actually going to see when we get up there? And more importantly, how are we going to know, for example, when we get to our destination, how are we going to know we're there? What's it going to look like? So just another little thing worth noting, normally we'd reference a map, but it just so happens that any of the maps I've looked at for this particular location, the detail they show isn't actually as good as what we'll see in this aerial shot. Actually, it's a Google hybrid view of the area. So just to sort of demonstrate, so our start point is actually over here. It's a bit tricky to make out there and actually not very visible on the aerial view, but that is actually that little mound that we're going to start on. You can't really see it here in the aerial view, but it does actually protrude above the ground a bit. And our destination point that we're going to navigate to is actually in this little circle here. So that's going to present a couple of little challenges. First of all, to go in a straight line, it's all well and good having a straight line to walk in, but we're probably not going to be able to walk in a straight line because we've got these telecommunications compounds to negotiate. And then the second thing is that once we get to these trees here, I don't know if we're going to be able to cut straight through these trees or not. It could be quite thick, so it might not be possible. So we might need to find another way around that. So look, that's kind of they're questions that we won't know the answer to until we actually get up there and find out. So look, an interesting little addition to the challenge. But that's just a quick overview of what we can expect to see when we actually get up there. Okay, so here we are up on top of Saggart Hill, and you might just see down here, this is the first of the two burial tombs or mounds we're standing on. And so I've got my compass, so what I'm going to do now is take my bearing and see where it takes me. Now notice that I'm holding the compass into my body like that. I'm not holding it out like that or out like that. I'm holding it into my body, pretty much into my chest or just below my chest. And I'm not moving the compass to get my bearing. I'm actually moving my body like that. So until they line up. And that's it. Okay, got it now. So when I take my line of sight from the line of sight arrow on my compass, what I'm actually looking at, I'm actually, would you believe, looking pretty much bang on that central mast there, the one that's furthest away. So looking in front of me here, I'm not going to be, as I suspected when we were looking at the aerial view earlier, we're not going to be able to walk in a straight line. But it is an advantage that the mast is there as my marker, so I can actually walk in pretty much any direction because now I have my line of sight defined by where I am to the mast. So all I need to do is get to the mast or as close to the center to it as possible, line it up with where I am, and then take a bearing from there, an onward bearing. So that's what we're going to do. So just one other thing before we start as well, not to forget the distance. So if you recall, we measured a distance, it was about 210 meters. Now again, if I'm not going to walk in a straight line, then I'm not going to walk 210 meters, I'm going to walk more. But we do have a reference point from the tower. So we do happen to get to a straight line from the tower, and we know what distance the tower away is from our destination point, then that can help us. We'll see, we get to the tower and we'll see what happens. So as you can see, and as suspected, it's fairly thick stuff. I'm just the far side of the mast, in line between it and that mast is between where I'm standing and our starting point. So we still have we're on our line of navigation, on our bearing of 108 degrees. So I'm just going to take another quick reference just to get roughly the idea that I'm going to need to be pointing in. So somewhere in there. Now I did have a quick check of the map earlier. I reckon it was about 2 millimeters on the map, which is about 60 meters to go between here and our destination point, which is the opening in the trees. But to be honest, it looks like again, we're not going to walk in a straight line. So just kind of, I'm going to start counting my double paces, which would be about 40 paces, or very roughly about 40 paces will give me 60 meters. And that's just a rough guide. So let's see how we get on. So it's fairly thick, but it looks like we have some sort of a path. So that's lucky, and it's possible that if there is something of interest in here, like an ancient burial mound, then chances are there may be some sort of a path beaten to it. Let's have a look down here. So again, my bearing is, we're obviously not walking along the bearing, we just use it as a kind of a general quick reference. Just walk in that general direction. And lo and behold, we come to our opening. And here we go. So here is our destination point, successfully arrived. Okay, so here we are. We're at our destination. I'll just do a swivel here. Just turn around 360 degrees. So look, that in fairness probably wasn't our standard example of navigating from point A to point B, given that we had so many obstacles to negotiate. So we didn't actually walk in a straight line the whole way, and neither did we have an opportunity to pace it out because we were just walking in a zigzag fashion. But having said that, it was a useful exercise to do, because you'll have noticed that we absolutely used the bearing that we took as a guide, and also the distance that we took as a guide, even though we didn't end up following either exactly the whole way. I don't think we could have found this spot without those two pieces of information as a guide, and indeed also the third piece of information, that look at the aerial photograph to see what we were going to be looking for. And it was literally a circular opening in the trees, which is exactly what we have here. And you can see behind me here the masts in the distance. So that's another good visual aid to get back, so I don't get lost when I'm going back through the trees. So look, it's a lovely day. It's dry. It's been sunny most of the day. It's getting a bit chilly. It's probably going to get kind of dark fairly soon. So time to wrap up, and maybe we'll do a quick recap when I get back home and get a nice hot cuppa. Okay, see you in a bit. Okay, back home, nice and warm and cozy, tucking into a hot cuppa, and one of my favourite homemade blueberry and cinnamon scones. And so just do a quick recap so on our navigation piece. So we started out with an intro, choosing the map. East-West map was the one that I use, and then we got straight into it. We took a grid bearing off the map, and then we did the conversion to magnetic north, or the magnetic bearing, and then we scaled the distance between the 2 points that we were looking to navigate between, and then we had a quick look at an aerial view of some of the features that we'd expect to see when we actually got onto the location. Then took a quick spin up and went through the actual exercise. And I guess we discovered that because of the nature of the terrain and the obstacles, we weren't able to walk in a straight line, and that had well, no pun intended, but it had a bearing on us following the bearing. We kind of veered off it. But the important thing was that we used our bearing to pick a point that was somewhere between our destination and on our start point. So by getting to that point that we could visibly see, we were able to essentially, stay on track, if you like. And then, even though we didn't exactly have the distance measured out exactly, because again we weren't walking in a straight line, it was useful to have that as a guide. Quick little thing that I threw in there that I hadn't mentioned before was about the double paces. So that's a useful tool as well to use. Most people will take about 60 something double paces for every 100 meters. When I say double paces, I literally mean 2 steps. So left foot to right foot, back to left foot, 2 steps, double pace. And I was doing it a very rough and tough, so it was my pace is, I think it's about 63. Double paces is 100 meters. It's roughly 2/3, or in other words, how many double paces times 1.5 gives me the number of meters, or take the number of meters and multiply by 2/3 to get back to the number of paces. So I mentioned that the distance from the mast to the destination point was 60 meters. So I did a rough tot to get, that's about 40 double paces. I didn't use them in the end because again it was a meandering track, but had that track meandered off somewhere into the distance, and I was well aware that I would have gone well beyond 40 double paces, I would have known that that path was not going to bring me to where I wanted to go, and I would have had to make a decision to maybe double back and figure out some other way to navigate to the destination. So even though we didn't directly use distance and bearing, it was very useful to have that information to hand. So that's about it in terms of that little navigation exercise. So if you found that useful, hopefully you did. Why not subscribe? Or indeed, if you want to ever want to come on an actual guided hike or with myself, or even a bike tour, why not get in contact? You can do so through my website, that's mybikerhike.ie, or mybikerhike.com. Either one will get to me. And thank you for watching and for listening.